Good evening, everyone. This is Michael, and we're having quite a brief Soul of Nations meditation today. And the reason for that is that at 9 o'clock, well, our time, 7 o'clock GMT, we're having a webinar, and we're joining forces with a number of groups, and especially the 2025 Initiative group. And this webinar will be focused on the new group of world servers, since this particular year is the festival year of the new group, from the 21st to the 28th of December 2019. The last time was in 2012. Every 7 years rather. And we are beginning to prepare, especially focusing our preparations around the time of the equinoxes and solstices. And this time we happen to have the Aries full moon as well, helping us launch into this kind of thought with a great deal of willpower and drive. So I want to, let's see here, I think you'll be able to see on the side that I've given you a number. And that number, maybe you take a pencil or a paper right now and write it down. It's in the chat box. You can get it from there, of course. I just want to make sure you have it. It's 248 486 563. That is 248 486 563. So you just set your browser for www, go to webinar.com, and it asks you if you want to join a webinar. And so sometime a bit after 6:30 GMT, let's say 6:35, 6:40, you can join in by just inserting these 9 numbers where it asks for them. I would have given you the link, but you know how YouTube is. It doesn't really allow you to put in other links. So maybe you'll join us, and we have a lot of deep meditation about the work of the new group of world servers. Now, basically, I'd like to do only 2 things this evening. And the first is to read from the Destiny of the Nations. We've been talking a lot about the first ray and the Shambhala force and how it affects the various countries. So I left off here a couple of weeks ago, and I'll continue for a little while, and then we'll go into kind of a reflection. The ways in which humanity itself is affected by this ray energy, that is the first ray energy, as it expresses itself in a twofold manner, producing a twofold result, is or are as possible. The ways are as follows. Number 1, there is at this time an emergence of certain powerful and dominating first-rate personalities into the theater of world activity. He's not just considering, if I may add, the personality ray only. These are mostly first-ray souls, but the first ray is dominating their personalities. So it's a combination of first-ray soul force, particularly appropriated by the personality. It's not pure first ray soul force. It is mixed with personality energy. So these dominating personalities, they're emerging into the theater of world activity. And, we have only to look at some of the leaders of nations and the various deliberations that are going on in the houses of Parliament and Congress in many countries, and we see these people at work. These people are in direct contact with this Shambhala force and are sensitive to the impact of the will energy of deity. Well, either for good or for bad. Hitler was one such, Stalin another, Franco another. When it comes to those who are definitely along the line of the forces of light, Roosevelt was another, and Churchill was another. Really dominant individuals who are either carrying the will to good forward as much as they can understand it, or are carrying something more selfish and nationalistic. So they're in direct contact with the Shambhala force and are sensitive to the impact of the will energy of deity. According to their type of personality and their point in evolution will be their reaction to this force and their consequent usefulness to the Lord of the world as he seeks out his plans of world unfoldment. Another one was Ataturk. The Tibetan complimented him, said he used the Shambhala force in a way that was very disinterested. In other words, he did not have personal interest in it. He used it for a larger purpose. The Tibetan goes on, the energy of the will of God works through them, though stepped down and often misused and misapplied by their differing and limited personalities. It's a combination of the personality ray, which in a way is dominant, but forcing that forward is the soul ray appropriated by the personality in most cases. In some cases it is really a purer soul force. So it's limited by their differing and limited personalities and interpreted unsatisfactorily by their undeveloped consciousness. We had Hitler and his gang, evil gang, as DK talked about them. They were gathered around him. They appropriated the Shambhala force, and they did so without the energy of love, simply the energy of will and manipulative intelligence. These people, he says, are found in every field of human affairs. They are the dominant persons and the dictators in every aspect of human living, political, social, religious, educational. Just if I may say, the founding fathers of the United States were wary of the king complex and sought in the kind of government they set up to alleviate the possibility that a dictator would take over, and thus they created a system of checks and balances between the executive branch of government and the judiciary and the legislature. So we watch out for these dominant types. They will emerge during the Aquarian Age, but they will be held in check by the social consciousness. Who shall say, until at least a century has gone by, whether their influence and their efforts have been good or bad? Where they flagrantly infringe the law of love, their influence may be powerful, but it is passing and undesirable, at least where that phase of their activities is concerned. Where they meet human emergency and need and work along lines of basic restoration and the preservation of units of synthesis, their influence is good and constructive. It is particularly, the first ray is coming through the planetary center, London, which is working on the constructive side. There's a lot of Vulcan in it. Vulcan is both the destroyer but the builder as well. And in Tokyo, we have thus far the first ray working from the materialistic aspect, and through Darjeeling, we have the first ray working through a highly esoteric aspect, which has not yet fully emerged. I would here point out that real group love never demonstrates as hatred of the individual. It may work out as the arresting of the individual's activities or enterprises where that is deemed desirable in the interests of the whole, and if what he is doing is estimated as harmful to the good of the group. It's interesting to note, how much the Tibetan insisted that the Nazi powers of Germany had to be completely defeated to the point of unconditional surrender, and the leading seven in this shambolic gang, you might say, appropriating shambolic energy in the wrong way, they had to be dispersed, banished, taken from their high place, and overcome completely. Okay, so here it is that if he is estimated as being harmful to the good of the group, that must be stopped. But the arresting, says the Tibetan, will not be destructive. It will be educational and developing in its results. The true first-ray personality, now here, he's talking again about a combination of rays, who works in response to this Shambhala influence, and let's think about this, will have the ultimate good of the group deeply enshrined in his consciousness and heart. I'm remembering Master Moria says that whoever works for the common good is with us, the common weal, as he called it, W-E-A-L. He will think in terms of the whole and not in terms of the part. That is the thing which he will endeavor to impress upon racial consciousness. This may lead at times to ruthlessness and cruelty if the personality of the individual is not yet controlled by the soul impulse. This bypassing of the soul can be sometimes a good thing and sometimes a bad thing. Remember that in the building of the Antakarana, when the soul is, so to speak, bypassed, the soul energy is first absorbed into the method of projecting the Antakarana. See, that's important. In other words, we absorb the energy of all the petals and the jewel in the lotus before the formulas, the words of power, of projection are sent forth. So the love energy is there. But the ruthlessness is possible, and he says such cases can frequently be seen. Now, I'm not going to go any further than that right now because, time is short. And I just plan for this to be a meeting of maybe 25 minutes, actually, at the most. So today is the 23rd of March, 19. I have to mark these things so I know where to begin the next time. Okay, friends, we're not going to do this in the usual way. What we're going to do is a little different. So I'll ask us to enter as deeply as we can into the consciousness of the Christ. The head of the spiritual hierarchy, the teacher alike of angels and of men, the one who said he would be there If two or more are gathered in his name, that's really an amazing, amazing statement. And we say then, we have gathered in your name, Lord, Maitreya, be with us. Now, his consciousness is well beyond our understanding, but as we begin to enter into the soul consciousness, we get a little inkling of that mind as it is in Christ. So we enter deeply as we can, into our own soul consciousness, and of course we realize that it really is group consciousness. We imagine that we can lift our consciousness onto the higher mental plane. It's as if we are deeply within the identity we usually assume or take for ourselves. We're in another kind of identity altogether. And it's the inner human being. The kingdom of heaven is within, and we're talking about now the third heaven, as it's called. And here we will find the light of the soul, the love of the soul, the sacrificial will of the soul. We will find a growing sense of synthesis and a great spiritual will. And on the different levels of this higher mental plane, we will find spiritual discernment. We'll always be able to tell the spiritual pattern behind the obvious effects. It's called spiritual reading. We will be able to find response to group vibration, because we'll sense how intimately and harmoniously related we are with the other souls, especially those who have cultivated, or beginning to cultivate anyway, the petals number 7, 8, and 9, the sacrifice petals. Response to group vibration. And we will also find spiritual telepathy. And by means of this spiritual telepathy, we will be able to begin to intuit the nature of the divine plan, especially to be impressed is that part of the divine plan which we can help carry forward. Now, what is the soul of our nation really? Eventually it has those qualities. It's a method of perception, a method of understanding. It has certain abilities according to the rays which the will of God seeks to see expressed. Try for a moment to, through imagination, to enter the soul of your particular nation. Maybe there will be certain outstanding symbols that help you do that. You will notice certain qualities in the soul of your nation. We're concentrating on the high qualities, really part of the soul contribution of your nation. Maybe articulate to yourself one or two of these qualities. I'm thinking of the Lords of Liberation, how they represent liberty, equality, and fraternity. Sometimes they affect nations that way, especially those who have prominent air signs. And when you have found one or two of the qualities, think of the soul of humanity as a whole, perceiving through all the different individuals, all the different individualities, the soul of the entire human race. And imagine your nation and every nation pouring one or two of the high national qualities into the soul of humanity. Imagine that. Until the soul of humanity is filled with the contributions of the many national souls, and therefore very rich in its qualities. And this is a way to proceed. Think of the relationship of your own soul and its qualities, enriching the soul of your nation, enriching its causal body, and then think of the soul of your nation enriching the soul of humanity as a whole. And that line of thought helps us work out the will of God and helps us bring every nation to the point where it can really take place, take its part in the divine plan. So few nations are really disciples yet, or even aspirants. Some of them are just in the beginning. But eventually every nation will be an aspirant, will be a national disciple, will finally be a national initiate. It will be a while, and each one of us in our own little place can help with that. So friends, as I said, this would be a short meditation, and it is short, but here is the number: 248-486-563. Use those 9 digits when you go to www.gotowebinar.com and plug them in, and you'll join a webinar in progress, and it will be in progress in another 10 minutes. Then you'll be in a holding pattern until we begin actually at 7 p.m. GMT. It is our responsibility to uphold and nourish and advance the soul of our nation. So let's do that by learning to live as a soul and deliberately and with our imagination contribute to the enrichment of the soul of our nation by sharing our soul qualities with our national soul, and then imagining the national soul sharing its qualities with the pervasive soul of humanity. In the center of the will of God I stand, naught shall deflect my will from His. I implement that will by love. I turn towards the field of service. I, the triangle divine, work out that will within the square and serve my fellow men. Maybe we'll see a few of you, some of you, in our preparation for the festival week of the new group of world servers, how we will proceed during the year to build up towards this important week of impact, as the Tibetan calls it. Meanwhile, thank you for attending, and I'm off to work on the webinar with Julia, who will be the main presenter there, and with the 2025 initiative group, which has done such great work over the years to alert us to the opportunities of the year 2025. Lots of love, many blessings, and we'll see you soon.